Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Tuesday. It's July the 8th. This is Let's Talk Tropics as we look over the Atlantic Basin and a little bit of the Pacific too. See if we got any tropical systems trying to get going here in the early part of July. Fortunately, things are relatively quiet and so far so good over the last couple of days. Let's go ahead and real quick take a look outside. 79 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Now, that is a little unusual for high noon here in Lafayette, but we've had some cloud cover and some widely scattered showers and thunderstorms out there. A lot of this has been out in the offshore waters, but some of it's spreading inland during the morning hours, so that's kind of kept our temperatures down just a few degrees. Looking at some of our traffic cams here in the local Acadiana area, I'll call it partly sunny. There are some breaks in the clouds. Not seeing any rain on any of the radars, at least here, at least on the roadways here. But it looks like a mix of sun and clouds a little bit more as you get up toward Opelousas and into Alexandria. Real quick trip along the Gulf Coast, Orange Beach, Alabama. Those beaches a little less crowded than they were over the 4th of July weekend. There was an immense crowd out there on Friday and Saturday. It was really amazing to see that. And then as we work our way west, Dauphin Island, the Sea Lab there, really pretty day there in southwestern Alabama. And as far as Biloxi, Mississippi, we're looking good there too. Beaches are nice and white there. And then down toward Cocodrie, we do have some scattered showers and thunderstorms there off to the right. This is looking off toward the east, so southward we've got some showers and thunderstorms there. Then out to the west, some more blue skies out some of the canals there around Galveston, but there are some scattered showers and thunderstorms in the offshore waters not far from that particular camera. So let's go ahead and start out here with the radar that we've got right now. And there have been rains over parts of Iberia, St. Mary, and much of southern Vermilion for most of the morning. We did have showers and even a few thunderstorms up along the I-10 corridor west of Crowley going over toward Lake Charles. That was earlier in the day, and you can see most of the action right now is staying here out in the offshore waters. Now, this is all part of an upper low that's moving across the northern Gulf Coast right now. There's a good amount of moisture in place, and with the unstable air, particularly south of I-10, we'll probably see some more scattered showers and thunderstorms going. So I'll keep the rain chance up at about 50% today. So kind of get a gauge on what's going on across North America first, and then how that is going to relate to the remainder of the tropics. Right now, we've got a pretty big ridge of high pressure that's out here over the west. You can see that because there's really no cloud cover there. You've got another decent ridge of high pressure in the upper levels that's developing out over Bermuda. And then you've got this little upper low that's right here that's going to continue to move off toward the west. And gradually that's going to be absorbed and will eventually weaken. So high pressure is going to take control off toward the west and off toward the east over the next couple of days. So we'll probably still see some afternoon showers and thunderstorms, but a little less coverage, I think, here for the second half of the week as those ridges will start to build and eventually join there along the northern Gulf Coast. So we do have some quieter weather even locally when it comes to the afternoon showers and thunderstorms as we head toward the latter part of the week and the weekend. Unfortunately, though, that does mean our temperatures are going to be going up. If you're going to do some boating or if you're working offshore, not a bad day out there. Winds are light out of the southwest at about 5 to 10 knots and seas running about 1 to 2 feet. Again, really, we've got the showers and thunderstorms here along the immediate coast of Louisiana, and some of that starting to develop over Texas. We got some clouds and a bit of shower activity that's kind of a northern end of an old tropical wave that's moving across Mexico, and that's bringing some showers and thunderstorms down in the Bay of Campeche. And then we've got more of an upper trough that's over Cuba, and that extends a little farther southwestward into the Caribbean. But using the water vapor, we can get a little better idea of where that upper low is, and it's really there over parts of the northern Gulf Coast, and we're going to continue to see that kind of drifting its way off toward the west over the next 24 hours. So as it does, the instability here is going to be moving a little bit farther off toward the west, and then we'll see that diminishing as we go through time. So let's go ahead and move along into the Central American satellite, where we are seeing more of an upper trough that's over much of the western Caribbean, right about in this area here, and that's going to continue to make its way westward. Right now, not as much rain over Central America, so not a bad day from Panama to Costa Rica and up toward Nicaragua. Rest of the tropical Caribbean. We've got that upper trough and a bit of a tropical wave that's kind of working across the central part of the Caribbean. And then if you look over toward the islands, you can see as the daylight comes up, you can really see how that Saharan dust is squeezing there between those islands. You get that bit of a shadow there from the dust blowing through. And then you've got some moisture north of the Bahamas that we'll keep an eye on. Really, I'm not seeing a whole lot going on here over the next several days, but I will want invite you to stick around as we look at more of the analysis, because maybe about 10 days down the road, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, we might see another trough digging in the southeastern part of the country, which could spin something up either over the Gulf or the Western Atlantic. Again, it's kind of a setup that's similar to what Chantal did, and we were able to see that development about 2 weeks ahead of time. So we'll watch the models over the next several days, but at least for the next week or so, the National Hurricane Center is not expecting any tropical development. But I'm going to show you some other things that show some activity maybe beyond that 7-day window. A real quick peek at the Pacific. We have no named systems out there right now, which is great news. And we really only have a low end chance for anything to develop here over the next 7 days. So let's get into the analysis here. And we'll start out with the basics. Of course, everybody knows we need very warm waters to be able to sustain any tropical systems. They need to be over 80 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface, which is 26.5 on the Celsius scale. The numbers here are Celsius. So basically on this map, if you like the colors better, anything that's yellow or brighter on this is warm enough to be able to sustain tropical activity. And as we look at the anomalies, this shows if the water temperatures are above normal or below normal for this date. And you can see that the Gulf and the Western Atlantic, except for the immediate East Coast there along Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, most of the waters are running above normal. You got some slightly cooler than average conditions over the Caribbean and the southwestern part of the Bay of Campeche, but at this point, those water temperatures are still above that 80-degree threshold. So even though they might be a little below normal, they're still warm enough to be able to support tropical activity. Next thing we tend to look at is the heat content, or the tropical cyclone heat potential. So that first map here that I'm showing you, this is showing you just the water temperatures at the surface, right there at the surface. You know, if you jumped in the water or in a lake or anything, the water's very warm at the top, and then your feet are a little bit cold. You only have to go a few feet down before you start feeling some cooler water. So the tropical cyclone heat potential measures how deep that 80-degree therm goes below the surface of the water. And the deeper it goes, the more heat content is there, and the more tropical systems have fuel to work with. Because if a tropical system moves over those waters, you know, you get the big waves and the wind. So it can pull up some colder waters that might be maybe a few hundred feet down below the surface. But when you have these warmer waters of 80 degrees going down 50 or 100 meters below the surface, tropical systems can work with that, pull up that extra fuel, and actually strengthen pretty easily. And if you already have a fully formed tropical system that moves over that, it just adds a little fuel to the fire when it can pull in some of that warmer water that's a little bit below the surface of the ocean. Now, those are the things that will help tropical development. We're going to look at a couple of things that inhibit tropical development as well. And one of those is wind shear. And anything you're seeing here in the reds and the oranges and the yellows, that's high wind shear. So you see a lot of high wind shear over the northern part of the Gulf, western Gulf. You've got that upper low. So you got a little bit less wind shear out over the central Gulf. But development areas through the Yucatan Channel and then down in the western part of the Caribbean and the other areas there off the Florida coast near the Bahamas is also one of those areas where we see more development during the early part of July rather. And even the Western Atlantic has some decent wind shear out there. So the conditions are pretty unfavorable for anything to develop out in the Atlantic basin and even going all the way over to the African continent. Now we do have tropical waves that are moving across the Atlantic and they're staying south of that Saharan dust, but you can see it's covering virtually all of the Atlantic from the African continent westward to the Lesser Antilles and the Greater Antilles there. And even some of that dust working its way into the Western Caribbean. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see those hazy orange skies again coming up a few days down the road as some of that Saharan dust starts to move off to the west. And that dust can kind of weigh the atmosphere down Tropical systems have a much harder time getting organized or even getting started when you have a lot of Saharan dust and or wind shear. So you got a lot of that out there. So that's why we're not expecting a whole lot of development here over the next week to 10 days. So let's go ahead and take a look at the models, and we'll start out with the GFS. I'm going to take you out 10 days here, and you'll see as this kind of runs through, you don't see anything that really grabs your attention until the very end. You see a little more moisture along the northern Gulf Coast. It's just reset here. So we're going through July 11th, 12th, 13th. We're into next week now, 14th, 15th, 16th. And then by the end of next week, you see that little bit of action there over the northern Gulf Coast. It's a similar setup to what we think we saw with Chantal, where we had a bit of a front. I'm not sure if this front is going to get much farther toward the south. I think it's going to get a little bit more help from a disturbance from the tropics, maybe an upper trough that's kind of working westward from the Atlantic. We call that a TUT. It's a tropical upper tropospheric trough. And occasionally, if you get a front that works in there, you can get some vorticity, some turning, and you can get a tropical system to kind of get started. And remember when we went back to those water temperatures and how high those water temperatures were across portions of the northern Gulf Coast, how extreme they are. That's why we're kind of watching that area a little bit closer, just like we did with that front and the development of Chantal over the course of the weekend. Euro model actually was the first one to kind of show these lowering pressures. And the Euro model is one that a lot of us meteorologists over the years, it's like, oh, if the GFS says something or the Canadian stuff, let's just wait and see what the Euro has to say. And we get that way because a lot of times Euro can be a little more dependable when it comes to developing tropical system. And it's not always the first one to pick it out, but it's kind of like that model. We wait to see if it's going to do that way. We get a little more confirmation. But the Euro is actually showing some lowering pressures and some additional moisture over the northern Gulf as we got into the latter part of next week. So we're talking about beyond July the 16th, 17th, 18th. It's not showing up quite as much in the 0Z, and the Canadian models just shows a little bit of extra moisture trying to develop into that area. Between now and the 15th, so let's say between now and the middle part of next week, I'm not concerned about anything developing. It's going to be beyond that date. So nothing to worry about this week. Nothing to worry about this weekend, but then maybe things might start to get a little more interesting toward the beginning of next week, and then really starting to fire up something maybe toward Friday or Saturday or next week. So you're talking about the 18th, 19th, 20th. So we're going out beyond 10 days here. The Icon model, unfortunately, only goes out 7 days, but it does start to show a little bit of a trough over southeastern parts of the U.S., so that might be some agreement there. But I did want to mention that the Euro tropical formation forecast between July 16th and the 20th has a little bit more of a hot spot there on the northern Gulf Coast. So what we start to look for when we don't have any tropical systems out there is we try to look at the models and just see if there's any kind of a blip. We use the global models because they go out the farthest in time. And then we start to look at other products, and this is one of them, the Euro tropical formation forecast. And you can see there's a little better chance of maybe something getting going either in the northern Gulf or the western part of the Atlantic sometime between July the 16th and the 20th. So you're talking about late next week and into that following weekend. So why do we think that, and why is the Euro talking about that? So this is where we'll kind of interact with some of the models here. And if you notice there, just south of the Florida Panhandle, it starts to turn a little bit more blue as we go through time. This is July 19th, so this is the morning of next a week from this coming Saturday. And then as we zoom it a little bit farther into July the 20th and July the 21st, that would be Sunday through Monday, you do start to see a little bit of lowering of pressure there off of the Louisiana coastline. So that is one of the models that we're looking at. GFS model. Meanwhile, as we go a little bit farther out into that range, It doesn't show it quite as much as what it was earlier, but you do see some lowering pressures a little earlier than what the Euro is talking about. So the Euro is going with like the 18th, 19th, 20th, while the GFS is running more like the 16th, 17th, 18th. So there's a little of an agreement on some pressures dropping along the northern Gulf Coast, but the timing is still a little bit off, which is not surprising because we're still talking about something a week and a half to 2 weeks out. Canadian model as we get into Wednesday, Thursday of that following week, not this week, but the end of next week. Again, some lowering pressures there over the central part of the Gulf. So the Canadian model is also at least showing some pressure drops. And as far as the icon, I don't really have that anomaly forecast, and it doesn't quite go out far enough. So again, when you got the Euro model that's talking about some of these lower pressures, perhaps starting to set up there over the northern Gulf Coast, and you got the GFS that's kind of looking at it too. So we'll just keep an eye on that particular area because after all, it is hurricane season. The Gulf, the Western Atlantic, the Mid-Atlantic states, the Eastern Caribbean, and the areas of the Western Atlantic near the Windward Islands are your most likely areas for tropical development during the month of July. So remember, by climatologically, that is one of the areas that we should be watching anyway. Secondly, those water temperatures are pretty extreme, and the wind shear right now is fairly high. We'll kind of follow those wind shear values over the next couple of days to see if anything changes. But I wouldn't be concerned about anything for the rest of this week, but I would start paying attention for the early part of next week. And even though July is a relatively uneventful month when it comes to tropical weather, it's not going to be long. Really, it's kind of hard to believe that the kids are already halfway done with summer vacation. So that first day of school is coming really soon, and that's about the time where you start to see the tropical activity really start to ramp up. So you and I, especially us older folks that are in the over 50 range, you know how fast time goes, and August 1st is going to be here before we know it. So make sure you're getting your stuff together, items that you would need to survive for riding out a hurricane at home, and also work with your family to get those plans together in case you would need to evacuate if a major hurricane was coming in our direction. So just work on that stuff over the next week while the tropics stay nice and quiet. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel. You find other cool videos there, and also subscribe to the channel as well. That way you get notifications when we go live for Let's Talk Tropics or Acadiana Weather Today that drops at 7 o'clock every weekday morning. Remember, you can hear my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And also follow my social media pages on Facebook and X. And thanks to all of you who have already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you on Wednesday morning. Have a great day.